The judge read the blue binder and didn't look up. Guardianship denied. Petitioners must leave by Sunday, 5 p.m. Mother turned to daughter-in-law and said, very plain, I sit at my own table. How did it come to this? Yesterday began with 4 degrees. Mother nudged the thermostat from 66 to 70. Daughter-in-law stormed in, dumped Mother's stew in the sink, hit the disposal. Son clapped once and said, electric's brutal. That was the house rule now. Mother didn't argue. Mother wrote. A spiral notebook, house log, whiteboard house standards, locked pantry, labeled half and half, notes on every quiet shove that pushed Mother out of her own rooms. At the senior center, a lawyer said, paper protects. So Mother built paper, a living trust, the deed in her name, the bank set right, a doctor's letter on capacity. Then the envelope arrived, emergency guardianship, hearing, Friday, 9 a.m. 48 hours. Mother gathered proof. The banker signed, the lawyer copied, the binder closed. Back in this courtroom, truth has friends. By Sunday at 5, someone leaves the blue-shuttered house on Sycamore Lane. The deed will decide who eats at the table. Stay with Mother. Silence wasn't surrender. Silence was strategy. That night when I nudged the thermostat from 66 to 70 because my fingers felt like 10 cold pennies, the walls remembered what came next. Who said you could touch that? Lacey's voice whipped across the kitchen before the air had time to warm. She popped the lid off the beef stew I'd made, tilted my bowl into the sink, and snapped on the disposal. Brown gravy sprayed my robe. Carrots clattered and were gone. Across the island, my son Evan clapped once. A single hard sound. Babe's right, Mom. Electric's brutal. He said it like an announcement in a grocery store. He said it like we were teammates and Lacey was our coach. I didn't say a word. I don't know why people think silence means surrender. Sometimes silence means, I want to see who I am when I'm not trying to convince you. I went back to the den, my den, though it hadn't felt like mine in months, and wrapped my hands around a mug of plain hot water because she said tea stains the cups. The furnace came on anyway, humming like a machine that still believed I mattered. Let me back up so you understand. The way a snowball turns into an avalanche. I am Ruth Ann Porter, 70 years old, owner of the little colonial with blue shutters on Sycamore Lane in Maple Grove, Ohio. You've driven past it. Everyone has. It's the one with the mailbox that leans like it's speaking confidentially to the sidewalk. If you saw me at Kroger, you might not see me at all. Gray ponytail, coupons in a zip top, church shoes that don't pinch. For 46 years, I was married to Bernie, a tire plant man who believed a good day ended with the nightly news and a bowl of ice cream. He drank his coffee out of the same chipped mug, and he liked his toast dark. We were not legendary people. We made a life that fit in a bread box. Steady, ordinary, enough. When cancer took him last spring, the quiet he left behind set itself down everywhere like heavy snow. People mean well when they say, if you need anything. It's not their job to guess what anything is. The first week, Evan came every day. He shoveled the walk, he took out the trash, he adjusted the TV on the wall a 1/4 inch because it was bugging him. Then he brought Lacey, and she stood in my kitchen with those perfect nails and said, "Why would you rattle around in this place alone, Ruth? We'll finish your downstairs, make you a suite, and we'll take the master. It'll be great for everyone." I heard the part that sounded like family. When grief is loud, you lean toward any voice that promises conversation. I said, "If it will help you," which is the kind of sentence that builds trap doors. They came with Pumpkin, the golden doodle, who loved everyone, and boxes that said, "Minimalist Kitchen," for a house that already had spoons. Lacey looked around like a contractor. The rocker went to the basement because visual clutter. The family cross-stitch "Bless This Home" was rolled and slid into a bin marked seasonal, maybe. My quilt chest, the one my grandmother's hands wore smooth, went into the garage for now, which turned into later, which turned into never. When you talk about control, people expect dramatic scenes, a slammed door, a shout you can quote. Control can be a chart on the refrigerator. Ours was a whiteboard with a nursery teacher font. House standards. The bullet points were tidy. Dishwasher off by 7 p.m., thermostat at 66, laundry assigned by day. Tuesdays were Lacey's and I was flexible, which meant I was a ghost in the laundry room. Label your food. She drew a happy star beside half and wrote, Lacey's. She put a smiley face after, no guess without approval. Surprises equal stress. My name wasn't anywhere on that board. It's funny what you miss. I missed the noise of drawers closing and opening when they belonged to me. I missed leaving a book open on the arm of a chair like I could walk away from it and trust it would be there when I returned. I missed the light in my own bedroom after dinner. That room was their room now. Mine was the small one, facing the maple tree out front, with a perfect view of my own mailbox winking at me like we shared a joke. The first time Lacey called me Ruth without a miss or mom, I swallowed the word. I told myself names are just mailboxes. The letter still gets there. Then she told me, lightly, maybe avoid chatting with the neighbors. Not everyone needs to know our business. I heard the lock click. It was beautiful outside. I baked a pan of cornbread because that's what my hands do when my head needs quiet. And I brought half to Mrs. Delgado next door. Lacey found the empty spot on the cooling rack and fixed her face like a picture frame. Boundaries, she said. We talked about this. We had not talked about it. She had decided and announced. There is a part of grief that is a fog, and another part that is a knife. In the fog, you try to avoid sharp edges. If someone puts signs everywhere, turn here, do not enter, authorized personnel only, you start to move the way they point because you are tired. And the fog is confusing, and the knife is a memory that cuts when you aren't expecting it. I like to say my first act of resistance was boring. I got a spiral notebook with a red cover and lines that refused drama. On the top line, I wrote house log. Beneath it, I wrote the day and time she took my bowl of stew to the sink. I taped in a grocery receipt where my debit card had paid for an $80 DoorDash I didn't eat. I made a note that the pantry had a combination lock now for pumpkin. I took a picture of the faint yellow marks on my forearm where her fingers had pressed when her friends from the yoga studio came, and she steered me gently back to my den and said, "You know how you get, Ruth. Stories are fine, but people have delicate nervous systems." I didn't bruise easily in my youth. Maybe you do when you start telling the truth. On Tuesdays, I went to the Maple Grove Senior Center for bingo and stayed for the legal clinic because the bulletin on the corkboard said free with coffee. The lawyer, a man named Whitaker with a beard and a corduroy blazer with elbow patches like you see in movies, asked if I had a trust. A what? A revocable living trust. It keeps your house yours while you're alive and makes transition smooth later. Do you have a durable power of attorney out there? Evan helps with bills, I said. Helping is nice, he said. Paper is better. Paper understands the difference between help and control. He gave me a blue binder with tabs that said trust, deed, banking, healthcare, powers, and letters. The binder weighed almost nothing. It felt like two hands on my shoulders saying, stand up. We met 2 days later at First Ohio Credit Union. Jim, the branch manager, turned his monitor so I could see and didn't make me feel like a child who can't count. We set my accounts payable on death to the Maple Grove Library Foundation because the library saved me when my legs ached for no reason except I had walked all day through my own life.
We revoked the power of attorney Evan had hustled me into signing right after the funeral while Casserole still wore foil. Families mean well, Whitaker said softly in the parking lot. And sometimes they do not. Paper doesn't care which one it is. It behaves the same. We filed the deed to my house into the trust with the recorder. The stamp was not very impressive. It didn't need to be. I slid the binder onto the top shelf of the linen closet between extra pillowcases. Lacey does not look up. Pride is a heavy chin. Some days were better. Some days I'd drink coffee on the back steps and watch the dog chase the squirrels. Some days she left a sticky note on the microwave that said, "Please, less cumin." And I tried because I wanted the inside of my house to smell like friendship again. I left peonies from the yard on the island and she said, "Allergics." I put them on my dresser and they made the room smell like May in my mother's kitchen. You'd be surprised how many tiny switches there are in a house. Internet passwords, refrigerator bins labeled "hours" in dry erase that smears when you touch it, domestic ink that disappears and reappears depending on who holds the cloth. I watched my house tilt towards someone else's gravity. I kept writing. Thursday, 2:15 p.m., she said, "Don't open the freezer. I meal plan." Saturday, 10:42 a.m., he changed the channel when I sat down and said, "Oh, I promised Pumpkin some dog TV." The real clue came the way trouble always does, in an envelope that did not belong to the person who opened it. I was looking for the carrot peeler in the junk drawer when I found a letter tucked under the appliance manuals. The seal had been broken cleanly, like a person who can open things without scarring them. It was from Franklin County Probate Court. Emergency guardianship, alleged incompetent. Hearing set for Friday at 9. Lacey circled the time with a neat pen. My body did not get cold. It got defined. You know when you stand in a doorway and one foot is in shade and one in sun? I felt both at once. I took the ligature pen out of my purse and wrote in the log, "Found envelope, opened." I took a picture with my phone beside the mixer whisk so the counter pattern would mark the day. I closed the drawer quietly because people tell on you when you startle them. After dinner, I took a slice of the cornbread nobody ate and my calm voice, and I called Whitaker from the laundry room. He said, "Bring the blue binder. Wear something with pockets for your tissues and some mints if you have them. We will meet outside 3B. I will bring Jim. Dr. Nguyen agreed to a capacity evaluation last week, right?" She said I was as capable as her own mother, I said. "Print that. Bring it. And Ruth, this is not an ambush if the truth shows up with friends. The truth can ride l'elevator." Friday morning smelled like wax and burnt coffee and something lemony that tried to hide paperwork. Courtroom 3B had a clock that ticked louder than it had to. Lacey wore a copper blazer that caught the light when she shifted her shoulders. Evan wore the tie I bought him for graduation, and I studied his hands, remembering how they looked when he was 3 and they reached for mine without calculus. "Mom," Lacey said before the bailiff called our case, "this is just to keep you safe." "Safe from what?" "From forgetting," she said. "From chaos." The bailiff said our names. We stood at the little tables like you see on television, only nobody spoke as smoothly, and the judge's glasses slipped halfway down his nose, which humanized him in a way no show ever does. "Petitioners," he said. "Your Honor," Lacey began, her voice like the commercial for a very good mattress. "Mrs. Porter leaves the stove on. She gets confused. She is vulnerable." "Evidence," the judge asked, and did not smile. "Family experience," she said. "We live with her." Whitaker stood. He did not rush. He placed copies of the trust and the deed into the record, the revocation of the power of attorney, the capacity evaluation from Dr. Nguyen, a letter from Jim at the credit union about a fraudulent attempt to change beneficiaries that had been declined and corrected, and photocopies of my house log, the whiteboard rules, the pantry combination lock with yesterday's date written above it, the text where Lacey told me not to talk to neighbors because small-town gossip kills peace. The judge read, and while he read, my heart did a strange thing. It got quiet. I realized I had been breathing like a person who expected to be interrupted, and suddenly nobody was interrupting me. Guardianship denied with prejudice, he said, as if it were a story he had told himself before but still liked. Given evidence of coercive control, the court issues a civil protection order for the next 6 months. Petitioners are ordered to vacate the residence at Sycamore Lane by 5 p.m. Sunday. Sheriff's Civil Division will conduct a standby. Petitioners may retrieve property with police presence at times agreed upon by counsel. Mrs. Porter retains exclusive possession through her trust. The gavel did not slam. He set it down the way you set a baby into a crib when you are trying not to wake anyone. I still heard it like thunder. In the hallway, Lacey leaned toward me and whispered, "This is cruel." Whitaker stepped between us like a door that newly understood its job. Evan looked at his shoes as if they might have gone somewhere without him. We walked out of the courthouse into Ohio sun, which is better than any other kind of sun when you've been under fluorescent lights. Tasha from Adult Protective Services shook my hand in the parking lot, not sideways like a sympathizer, but up and down like you do when you make a deal. "I'll check in Monday," she said. "Tonight, go home and open your windows while it's still warm." On Sunday at 5:55, a sheriff's cruiser idled at my curb exactly the way the judge had said it would. The deputy stood in my foyer with his hat in his hand and a smile that carried a lot of people through worse. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said. Behind him, Lacey yanked a suitcase like the zipper owed her money. Pumpkin cried because he did not understand court orders. Evan carried a box and didn't turn around. "Where are we supposed to go?" Lacey asked me, and I was startled because for a second she sounded like a little girl who didn't want to leave a sleepover. The sound might have been real. Coercion makes children of everyone. "I don't know," I said, and I did not lace the words with venom because venom would live in my curtains after they left. "I hope somewhere that lets you feel like people don't need to ask permission to eat at their own table." When the door closed, the house exhaled. It's a real thing the way a house holds breath. I took down the whiteboard and wiped it with Windex until even the ghost of half and half was gone. I turned the thermostat to 70 and the furnace sang a low song it had been trying to hum for months. I set my little table with the good plates Bernie and I never used because we were waiting for the Pope. And you know what? The Pope never came, and that's not his fault. I ate meatloaf with ketchup glaze and green beans heavy with butter and almonds. I took my time, the way you take your time in church when you actually mean the prayer. After I washed the dishes, I took the blue binder from the linen closet and laid it on the table like company. Whitaker had a copy, and Jim had a copy, and a copy lived in a safe deposit box at the bank. If ever someone told me paper couldn't love me back, I would agree and point to the way it protected me anyway. On Monday morning, Tasha from Adult Protective Services came with a clipboard and kindness and the kind of shoes you wear when you stand for a living. She checked the locks, asked me if I wanted a doorbell camera, no subscription needed, there's a simple one that texts your phone, and gave me a magnet with the APS hotline number. "How are you feeling?" she said, which is a ridiculous question if you try to answer with one word. Like the first time I swam a whole lap without stopping. Tired and proud and confused no one is cheering. I'm cheering. Also, get a dog gate as Pumpkin visits for holidays. If we have holidays, I said. You get to decide that. We love to remind people.
My house healed itself in small ways. The dryer stopped squeaking. The morning light found the corner of the den again and stayed there past 10. I took my rocker out of the basement and set it by the window where it belonged. On Wednesday, Mrs. Delgado brought a green bean casserole because laughter returns faster when it doesn't have to cook. I carried half to Pastor Jan at First Methodist, and she said, "We put you on the meal train and you're bringing me dinner?" I told her a person needs to prove to herself that she isn't a project. At night, I slept in my own bed with my own sheets and my own dreams, which were busy for a while. Sometimes I woke up at 2 and rehearsed what I would have said in the courtroom if I had been a very brave person with the gift of perfect sentences. Sometimes I walked quietly through my house like a museum you can touch. It is not wrong to love your own things. It is not wrong to love the space between them. Evan texted me after 2 weeks. "Mom, I'm sorry. We'll pay you back for the downstairs. We didn't buy nicer hearts, so the downstairs wasn't an upgrade anyway. I typed, "Don't worry about the money. Worry about the truth." Then I went outside and cut back the boxwoods because they had started to look like men with bad haircuts. The ladies at the library asked me to join the book club on Thursdays. We read a novel about a woman who moves into a lighthouse and finds out how loud water can be. I brought oatmeal cookies from the recipe that works every time and made half the batch with raisins and half with chocolate chips because it is easier to love people when you make small accommodations that cost you nothing. I bought myself a Ring doorbell like Tasha suggested. The first time it pinged my phone, it was a squirrel. The second time, it was a man selling pest control who called me sweetheart, and I did not throw a shoe at him because my porch doesn't deserve that energy. The third time, it was Evan. He held a paper bag like an apology and stood at the very edge of the doormat as if the mat were lava. I opened the door and didn't move to the side. He stayed on the porch. "Mom," he said, and the sound was a brand new language that sounded like the one he spoke at 5 when he asked if worms had birthdays. "I brought your book back," he pulled To Kill a Mockingbird from the bag, the exact edition that went missing from my den. "I found it in our storage unit. I forgot how it got there." I took the book and turned to the first page, where my maiden name is written in blue pen, and my handwriting is hopeful. "Thank you," I said. "Would you like water?" I didn't say come in. He didn't ask. A boundary is real when neither person leans on it to see if it holds. We sat on the porch in metal chairs that heat themselves from the sun. A robin stitched the air around our maple tree. Cars hummed. Civilization is ordinary noises doing ordinary things without checking. "I don't know who I was," he said. "I do," I said, and he flinched. Honesty is mean when it thinks it's finishing a sentence no one asked to hear. I softened because he had used his feet to come here, and there are better uses for feet. I use a man who liked feeling big. You stood next to someone who made you bigger. I don't know if you'll be that man tomorrow. I hope not. "Do you forgive me?" he asked. "I'm not keeping score. I'm keeping house." "What does that mean?" he said. "It means I can't live in a place where I'm always measuring you." I moved the measuring tapes back to the toolbox. "Can I do anything?" he said. "You can tell the truth about what you did. You can say it without adding my name, like I did this because she did that. You can stand on my porch and learn how to leave me alone and love me at the same time. You can pay the gas bill next month if you want something to sign." He laughed, a short surprise sound like babies make when they find their feet. "I'll pay the gas bill and the water, and I'll come fix the downspout Saturday if you'll text me a picture of the part. Take a picture on your way out. It's 2 feet from where you're sitting." That night, I pulled the blue binder down and added a tab that said, "When I'm gone." I wrote a note in a clear hand. "House passes to Maple Grove Library Foundation. Call Whitaker. Call Jim. If you are reading this and your name is not Ruth Ann, remember that a house is never more yours than you protect the person who lived inside it first." My body still felt its age. My shoulder, ignored while I tended to legal papers, reminded me it had been carrying winter. Dr. Nguyen sent me to physical therapy at St. Luke's. The therapist, a woman named Selena, with gentle hands and a voice that gave orders you wanted to obey, asked me to lift soup cans at home and squeeze a ball when commercials came on. Every time I completed a set, I said out loud, "Good job, Ruth Ann," because you should be as kind to yourself as you are to anyone who brings you a casserole. Spring turned the grass into a color you'd be embarrassed to wear. I planted 2 tomato starts because I wanted to eat something I had grown myself again, and because tomatoes are a promise you can see from the kitchen window. I lay on my back in the yard one night and looked at the stars and thought about how no one owns those and how people still try. Pastor Jan asked if I would give a 5-minute talk at the women's brunch about finding strength. I stood at the front of the fellowship hall with my knees knocking and poured coffee into a styrofoam cup because hand busy means voice steady.
I said, you can love people without letting them hold your keys. You can wait quietly until it is time to say the true thing, and then you can say it in a room where the truth wears a robe. Afterward, a woman my age with a lopsided smile came up and whispered, "My daughter keeps my checkbook because she says numbers make me anxious." Another said, "My son took my mail so I wouldn't worry." We stood in a cluster like trees that just realized they are a forest, and we wrote Whitaker's number on napkins and we laughed, not because anything was funny, but because air had returned to our lungs. There were days I missed the idea of Lacey. When she wasn't trying to shrink me to fit her idea of serenity, she could be very clever with flowers, and Pumpkin is innocent by profession. I read somewhere that missing a person and missing how you wanted them to be are two different projects. I took the old quilt from the chest in the garage and washed it gentle. I put it on the rocker and the pattern looked like 100 small roads that all led home. Evan texted on a Monday that he had accepted a foreman job in Dayton. "He'll be closer to the plant," he wrote. "I'll be gone a lot. I'll try to stop by before I go." "Travel safe," I wrote. Not because I wasn't hurt, because love does not erase hurt, and hurt does not erase love. And somewhere between erasing and writing over, you learn to keep notebooks in which two truths can sit side by side without crossing out the other. He came that evening with a tool belt and fixed the downspout. He took measurements for a grab bar by the back steps because he had the sense to know I will live here a long time. He set a bag of groceries on my counter, and I did not say who's half and half because the joke would have been mean. I wrote "thank you" on the chalkboard where the whiteboard had been, and I left it there for a week until it began to smudge like the day you realize forgiveness is not a document, it's a practice. Summer made the tomatoes fat and showing off. I ate them with salt and bread and once as a dinner with just a peach, because you can do that at 70 when nobody's taking a picture of your plate. The county fair returned, and I walked slowly through the barns with Selena from physical therapy because she wanted to show me the pig her niece was raising. We ate frozen lemonade, and she told me I was strong. I told her I was stubborn. We agreed they looked similar at a distance. Every now and then, late in the afternoon, I stand by the thermostat and place my fingers on the plastic like it's a glass window of a nursery where a baby sleeps. I buy my own electricity with my own money, and I adjust the heat when I'm cold because that is the dull kind of freedom a person should not have to write down. I wrote it down anyway. Not because I feared forgetting, but because when you write a thing, you are telling your future self that your present self chose you. The day the library sent a thank you letter for the POD designation, I sat in the parking lot and cried into my cardigan. A woman in the space beside me tapped on my window and asked if I was okay, and offered me a tissue from a box with little daisies on it. I took one and said, "I am better than okay. I am a person who made a decision on purpose." She laughed, that low surprise people make when joy sneaks up on them. She said, "I'm going inside to get a mystery. Want to come?" We did. We checked out novels with women on the covers who looked like they could rescue themselves. On the first cool evening of September, I invited Pastor Jan and Mrs. Delgado to dinner. I made pot roast and mashed potatoes and waited until the steam fogged over the window over the sink, which is my measure that a house is working. At the end, we had pie from the place on Main because I am not trying to pass tests anymore. We played cards because women who play cards are warlords. "Tell them," Pastor Jan said when I hesitated in the story at the part where the deputy stood in my foyer. I asked her, "Tell them what?" She said, "Tell them you were not brave. You were careful. It is different and it matters." So I did. I said, "I was careful. I kept notes. I put paper in a binder. I told 3 people who would answer the phone. I did not announce anything. When the time came, I answered the judge. He did not give me a prize. He gave me my house back. It is enough. At night, when the crickets sing and Maple Grove pretends it is a postcard, I sometimes walk to the front door and rest my hand on it like you press your palm to a friend's shoulder when you mean both hello and thank you. The wood is warmer than you expect. It holds everything. It remembers the stew and the hush and the laughter that came after the day Mrs. Delgado told a terrible joke about a chicken, and I laughed so hard I had to hold the counter.
If you were listening to me in a kitchen where your hands know where every spatula lives, or in a room where someone else has labeled the shelves and it makes your throat close, I want you to hear this clear. Write it down. Put it where you can find it. Call someone whose job is paper and put your name on your life again. Do not wait until you need sirens. You are not asking permission. You are declaring ownership. And when you are done writing and stamping and handing over clean copies to people who promise not to lose them, make yourself dinner with the good plates, not because you have company, but because the company has been waiting on you in your favorite chair for a long time. Sit down without asking. Adjust the thermostat because you were cold. Open the window because you want to hear the crickets. Bless your home, out loud if you want. Nobody fails that test. I still keep the spiral notebook. I still save receipts. I still walk through rooms as if the furniture might move. That's what happens after long winters. But I also dance in the kitchen when the Cardinals win because a friend named Al left me a mug on the porch with their logo and no note, and I decided that was not flirting, it was kindness. And I let it be kindness without borrowing trouble from it. If someone tells you you're being dramatic for keeping your blue binder on the shelf, remind them drama requires audience, and binders do not. I used to think strength was shouting loud enough to drown someone else out. Turns out strength is speaking plain in a room that is trained to listen, and then going home to change the sheets. When I close my eyes, I see 3 things. Bernie's hand steadying a wobbly dining room chair years ago and saying, "There, now it knows what to do." The judge's glasses sliding down his nose as he chose the language that kept me safe. And my own hand reaching for the thermostat with no one behind me to call me small. If you've ever been told the house belongs to whoever makes the rules, I am here to tell you the house belongs to the one who loves and maintains it with her whole weight. The house belongs to the woman who pays the bills and cleans the crumbs and files the deed and invites the right people to stand beside her when the facts are in question. The house belongs to the person who stays. I stayed. I lived to see my tomatoes blush and my neighbor's hydrangeas turn to papery moons and the way Pastor Jan looks when she wins at rummy by 1 point. I lived to stand on my own porch and watch my son arrive with a tool belt and a better sentence than the one he practiced in the car. I lived to wake at 2 a.m. and go back to sleep without checking locks I knew worked because I had made them work. I don't know which part of this matters most to the woman you are. Maybe it's the binder. Maybe it's the judge. Maybe it's the cornbread cooling with no one waiting to register a complaint about cumin. For me, it was the moment I realized my silence had not been absence. It had been strategy. I was not missing. I was gathering. The next night I set the table again. Fork on the left, knife and spoon on the right, napkin folded the way my mother used to do it for Thanksgiving when she made us all say something we were grateful for. "I am grateful for paper," I said to the empty room. And then I laughed and shook my head and added, "and heat, and the fact that you do not need to be loud to be right." If you need a sentence to carry into your own house, take mine. I say it under my breath whenever I touch the thermostat. At the sink when the disposal scares me with its sudden roar. In the grocery aisle when I choose the brand of coffee I like because I can. I sit at my own table.